Okay, welcome everyone to the Conservation Education Lunch and Learn series. This is the last one of the year, so we've had a lot of incredible subjects and expertise and conversations over the year in this webinar series, and I'm really excited to be ending the year with this last one. It's going to be a really good one. My name is Amber Schiltz. I'm with the Fish and Wildlife Education Division at Nebraska Game and Parks, and I help to host this Conservation Education Lunch and Learn webinar series. I see a lot of familiar faces, but if this is your first time hopping on this series, it's just a series to really elevate the practices and the understandings and kind of the science behind education, environmental education and conservation education. So we try to hit a lot of really great topics, everything from science communication, community science, even aligning developmental needs with our education practices to the conservation impact of education. So lots of really great subjects. Today, I'm very excited. Our presenter will be speaking on the importance of interpretation. And so if you're not sure what that is, or you haven't heard about it before, or if you have, we'll learn a lot today. I'm really excited to introduce Amanda Filipi. I first met her when I myself was an environmental educator out in Western Nebraska and worked alongside her in partnership for a few years. And during that time, so she's out at Wildcat Hills, and she'll say more probably. But during that time, I watched her lead field trips and do interpretation guides and hikes and community events. And during that time, I just, as a kind of a newer environmental educator myself, I learned so much from her. And so I've always been like learning from her and watching her style and the way she's able to connect the audiences and anybody to any kind of thing that's out there in the natural world. So very grateful for that and grateful to have her here today. If you have any questions as we proceed with this, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be watching it, and Amanda mentioned we can get to them along the way, but I'm sure we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. So, Amanda, with that, I will give it over. Thank you for being here today, and I'm excited to learn from you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today. So my name is Amanda Filipi. I'm an outdoor education specialist, and I am out in Western Nebraska. I am originally from Central Nebraska, so I saw a couple people in there said they're from the Grand Island area. So I am originally from north of Grand Island. I have an identical twin sister that is out of the Grand Island area doing extension. So if you happen to see somebody that looks exactly like me, go and have a chat. It'll be fine. We love meeting new people that way. So I had to let my Grand Island folks know what's going on. So today we're going to talk a little bit about interpretation and creating meaningful experiences, right? And meaningful connections through either our programming or maybe some other interpretive things like signs or any type of resource or anything along those lines. So like I mentioned, I'm originally from Central Nebraska. I am a certified interpretive guide with the National Association for Interpretation. I'm also a certified interpretive trainer. And certified interpretive guide trainer with the National Association for Interpretation. So I went through a couple different trainings and have the ability to train people on what is interpretation, how it is effective and useful. So we're taking like a 36-hour course and condensing it down into an hour. So if there's something that we don't get to or something you wanted more information about, I can provide my contact information and we can rock and roll from there. So along the lines, if you would like to put your video on, if you want to get in the chat, feel free to do that. Give me some nonverbal cues as an educator. Talking to a bunch of black screens is sometimes challenging. But so you're more than welcome to do that. Now I understand this is over the lunchtime hour. So if you're eating, that's fine. If you want to leave your video off, that's quite all right. But I just wanted to let you have that option as well. So today we're going to talk a little about interpretation. And through interpretation, we're going to start it with a quote. So through interpretation is understanding. Through understanding is appreciation, and through appreciation is protection. So Freeman Tildwin is pretty much the godfather of interpretation, and just kind of started this whole kind of process about what is interpretation. So there's a lot of definitions out there on what is interpretation. Oftentimes when I tell people that I do interpretation, they ask me what language I speak or I interpret. And that it's slightly different type of interpretation. So the interpretation we're going to chat about today is a purposeful approach to communication that facilitates a meaningful, relevant, and inclusive experience that helps to deepen that understanding, broaden perspectives, and inspire engagement. Okay, so this is the type of interpretation that we're going to be chatting about today. It can be done through activities, develop opportunities for the audience to make an emotional connection and meaningful connection to the resource. So oftentimes as natural resource experts, we have a lot of great knowledge, but how we share that knowledge with the audience is what's going to make a meaningful impact. So the first thing we need to know when we're doing a program or we're designing a sign or we're, kind of doing any sort of interpretive program is we need to know our audience, right? Our audience comes to programs with lots of background knowledge, right? And or baggage, right? So we can gain an understanding of our audience by asking them questions. Oftentimes, if you're doing an educational program, getting to the program early, so you can ask these questions. Why are you here? What brought you here today? What did you hope to find out? What do your kids want to learn while they're here today? So just some interesting questions so you can probe a little bit more about your audience and what they're bringing to the table and to your programs. First, we're going to do a little background information about ways that we can connect to our audience. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some of us might be familiar with this, but Maslow came up with this back in the 40s and suggested that people are motivated mainly to meet the basic needs first before moving up to that self-actualization. So people, especially when doing educational programs, we're talking about, physiological needs. If somebody has to go to the bathroom and you haven't pointed that out when they first get there, they're going to be more concerned about going to the bathroom than what information you're providing to them. Okay. And so we want to make sure, people's needs, basic needs are met, right? If people are cold and shivering, they're not gonna feel like their needs are met. So we start off with our basic needs, then we go up to safety needs, and then we go on to some of the psychological needs. So wanting to belong in a program, right? Wanting to make sure that they're having a great relationship either with the presenter or another attendee before we kind of reach the pinnacle that's self-actualization. So self-actualization is the peak experience, right? People are usually feel joy and wonder. They often lose track of time and have acute feeling to what they're experiencing, what is important to them, what they value, what's unique, what's special. And those type of, oh, do we have a question? Nope. Okay. I wanted to make sure if anybody had a question that they got it answered. But during those types of experience, they're usually transformative. People walk away with a feeling like they've fundamentally changed. So that's what our goal is when we're doing an interpretive program. We're wanting to get our audience up to meet their self-fulfillment needs. Now Maslow did this a long time ago, right? He came up with this in the 40s. So I feel like we need to add just another another couple things that need to be met, basic needs before we move up the food chain. So the first thing now in the 21st century might be battery and Wi-Fi. And that could be a joke, and that could not be a joke. So that's something in the 21st century to kind of look into as well. Okay. So what are some examples of Maslow? Like I mentioned before, letting folks know, okay, this is where the bathroom is. You're more than welcome to use the bathroom. Here's where our water is. When we're setting the time of our programs, right? We need to think about, is lunchtime the best time to do a hike? Maybe, maybe not, right? Um, People want to feel safe and secure, right? Will a first aid kit kind of help with that? Are the cost of the programs preventing people to coming to a program, or are they worried that they just spent buku bucks on a program to get in, and now, you know what I mean, that's kind of weighing on their mind. Another simple way of giving Maslow or using Maslow during a program is making sure you use the person's name. So again, getting there before a program, introducing yourself. Hey, where are you from? Oh, I see that you are from Grand Island. I'm so excited to see you. Using eye contact, and then recognizing their input. Okay, so oh, hey, that's a really great question. Let's go ahead and explore it a little bit further. So in 2020, Maslow was actually used in the healthcare field. So healthcare providers were all suited up with all sorts of different things on, right? And you weren't able to see their faces. And so what they did is they would tape pictures of themselves with their name and what their badge was on the outside of their gowns. So that would make their patients feel a little bit more comfortable. That's an example of Maslow as well. So I know that was a brief introduction to Maslow, but it's kind of wanting to make sure that people's basic needs are met, right? So they can concentrate and pay attention to the information that you're providing to them. Okay. Another thing that is helpful for our audience is making sure that we incorporate all sorts of learning styles and senses, right? People tend to remember and recall things that maybe they touched or they smelled or they heard during a program. So they might not remember the very fine details, but they'll remember the experiences that they had that was engaging multiple senses. So are you using, visual aids? Can you incorporate a sound in there? Is there something that people can touch or something that people can do during a part of your program? This also says, scent or recalling a scent. Hey, this reminds me of my grandmother, right? This reminds me of a time that we went to a park and everything was blooming. And then if taste is something that you can do as well. Sometimes that's a little bit harder sense to try to engage. But that's also an option when you're maybe doing a living history demonstration and you're baking something in the kitchen. Is it something that people can taste as well? That's an example in there. So some things to consider when you're presenting is your audience, and you need to think about who is your audience, right? Are they a school age kiddos coming on a field trip, or is it mixed age family group, right? That is something to consider when you're planning your program, and we'll talk a little bit more about the organization of your program. But that's something to think about when you're designing your program, is keep the audience in the back of your brain. If you're going on a 4-mile adventure when we're leading a hike, is it meant for senior citizens, or are you thinking, avid hikers? That's something to kind of think about. Why are they attending? Okay. Are they just looking for some fun, or are they wanting to learn a new skill? Where are they from? That's important when you want to connect them with the audience, because we need to find something that, they already have in the back of their brain and we're able to connect it to a memory. What their age is, um, what some of the, I want to say, godfathers of interpretation say is, kids, when you're doing a program for kiddos, that's very different than when you're doing a program for adults. Um, what content is said, how you're presenting the information, and some of the different background information that you're providing to them. So that's just something to keep in the back of your brain. What knowledge, skills do they already have? Is there an interest? And then what do they need, or what are they looking to get out of this type of program, so you can move them along to self-actualization. So another thing to think about is, what is motivating your audience? And I know this was a lunch and learn that was done a while ago, right? But it's very relevant. There are different types of interpretive audiences that reflect their motivation. And those would be like explorers. So they're curious, they might spend more time and get involved, potential volunteers. We also have facilitators that just want to share the experience with other people, thinking like grandparents and things like that. We have experience seekers that often want to take photos with the resource, or, get see the important sites while they're there. We have professional folks that, this is their hobby. They really enjoy this certain topic. And then we have folks that just want to recharge in the outdoors. They want to sit, they want to take in all the sights. And again, this is just a brief introduction to this study and this research that was done. I know Amber had done a lunch and learn series on this, and we can share that link in the chat if you want to watch that lunch and learn, because it does provide a lot more information about those different types of audiences and how they're motivated to coming to programs in your sites. So, um, does anybody have any questions about the audiences before we move on to the next topic? Okay,
I'm not seeing any, Amanda, and yeah, I put that link in the chat. So
perfect.
thank you.
I was counting my 5 seconds to make sure I gave people plenty of time. I
Ah,
wasn't,
excellent.
if you
Very
saw
good.
my lips moving, that's what I was doing. I was quietly, counting. So we're going to move over to, we talked about the audience, right? We're going to talk a little bit now about the resource, what we are wanting to present on, what are we wanting to share with the group of folks coming to our programs or to our sites, or reading our cool interpretive signs and things like that. So one thing, interpretation is not, okay, and I get this a lot, is interpretation is not just a bunch of data, right? We're going to word vomit as much data as possible to our attendees, because data is important, and that's obviously what they want to walk away with is everything. Data is, yeah, data is important, but is it the main focus of our program? No, we need to make sure it's relatable, and we need to make sure that our audience connects with the thing. And our programs are not entertainment. I don't want to just be the fun ranger, the fun naturalist up there, and we're just going to go and eat ice cream and chocolate all day, and that's all we're going to do is bond, and they're going to like me by the end of the program. And entertainment is important, and it does play a role, but it needs to be spaced out a little bit, okay? So more information about knowing our resource is when you're designing your program, or when you're coming up with your programming, you need to make sure you present balanced information. That's looking at things, like I said, newspapers, research articles. They used to have these things called encyclopedias. that people would look into, but you know, the internet took that over. But especially when you're presenting on history or historical events, it's really important to present balanced information, because sometimes history is messy, right? Um, and just to ensure that we don't relive past events, we need an open dialogue about these, you know, events that have happened in either our state areas or these different sites that you are managing. Another thing when you're knowing your research, be beware of naturalist lore. So when I, you know, used to be a temporary naturalist at Ponca State Park, I needed to make sure that I researched my data and just didn't take whatever the naturalist said before me, and that was my program, right? I need to make sure just because one person presented that information, need to make sure that information is correct, and it's kind of, we don't want to make sure that we're cycling some um unrealistic information that's out there. Okay. Another thing we need to make sure is we give credit where credit is due. So if we're researching something and somebody had this really cool article, there's a way that you can present it being like, oh my goodness, I read this here, and this information came from this study or this site or that something along those lines. Um, Interpretive programs usually include either a good story, some unusual facts. We're going to start with like a quote. I absolutely love gee whiz information because I just geek out on that. So if you ever want to go on Jeopardy and know a bunch of useless wildlife, interesting wildlife facts, I'm probably your girl here. Um, we also want to include things that evoke emotion or a physical response, okay? So like I said, interpret data. We just don't want to word vomit a bunch of information and data to them. We need to make sure that we include different types of vehicles or different ways of presenting this information to the audience, just to have a well-rounded program. One thing when you're coming up with your programming, you know, people have access in their pockets and on their computer to data. So, you know, try to find some interesting data, not just ordinary stuff. Doom and gloom, you know, same old news. Not saying that that's not important, but a lot of people can get that information on their own. So we need to have a fresh take on that information and maybe present them some information that they haven't found on their own. So I wanted to share with you this quote. It's a little long, but um, do not try to satisfy your own vanity by teaching a great many things. Awaken people's curiosity. It is not enough to open minds. Do not overload them. Put there just a spark. If there is some good flammable stuff, it will catch fire, right? And why I say that is we don't want to be a sage on the stage and just talking to hear yourself talk. A lot of interpretive programs, we understand that you know your information really well. It's just relating it to your audience, and giving them that spark. Another thing is, um, if you don't know the answer, if somebody comes up with a really interesting question, it's okay to say, I don't know, but make sure you follow it up with, but I will find out. Just don't make stuff up, because you want them to be trusting you and the information that you give, right? And if you give some misleading information, you know, maybe they're not going to be as open to your suggestions or your program, just because they've had a previous bad experience with that. So when we're thinking about presenting that information, we need to make sure to think of Maslow and how we're getting them to self-actualize. Okay. So we talked a little bit about our audience. We talked a little bit about our resource. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff that we just covered? I waited 5 seconds. So if there's anything, you can put that in the chat. Now we're going to deep dive into program development. And that's where this is going to be a little tricky. And this is where we might spend a lot of our time today is how do we develop these programs or these resources for our audiences? Okay. So we're going to, like I said, kind of dive right in and go into program development. There's lots of things to consider when you're creating your program. And we'll dive into some of those things and things to think about when we're organizing our activities and our programs. So, first thing is, why do you even want to do this program or this activity, right? You have to think about what is your goal? Why do you want to do this, right? What do you hope to kind of accomplish with this activity? One big thing, especially now in our agency, we're looking about are we reaching our program objectives? So your objective is measurable. What do you want your audience to do after the program? So it has to be like I would like 15% of the audience to be able to properly identify a hognose snake if they come across one in the wild. Okay, those are things that I'm going to be talking about throughout my presentation, but I want to make sure that the audience is learning what I hope they're going to learn, right? And the other thing to think about is, does it tie into your agency or your organization's mission, right? If it doesn't tie in your agency or organization's mission, why do you want to do the program? What's your goal to this program? So those are just some kind of things to think about of when you're doing your program. What are your goals? Why do you want to do this program, and what do you hope your audience is going to learn after attending your program? Another thing to think about is your program information easy to follow? Is it organized? Interpretation is organized. And the way that it is organized is we're going to think back to our early days of English, introduction, body, conclusion, right? So when you're doing an introduction, your audience wants to know who you are, what's going to happen, where we're going, how long is this going to take? And then you're going to do your theme in there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about themes. When you're doing a program for adults want to know how long the program is going to be, and then again, what is required of them. So, hi, my name is Amanda. We're going to go on a little bit of a hike down our nature trail here. The nature trail is less than a half a mile. There are some ups and downs on there, and there's some steps that are required to come back up here. It is a dirt path that is about 12 inches long, wide. And so I introduce that at the beginning so that way my audience understands. So they can choose at that point whether they would like to continue on that hike, or maybe if it's not something that they would like to do, that's their opportunity to be like, okay, cool, thank you so much, but I think we're going to go because we don't have enough time. Usually you like to say about how much time it's going to take so people can choose whether or not they want to commit that much time to it. Okay. So you have your introduction, your body. We're going to talk about sub themes here in a little bit, right? And then your conclusion. So you review your main points, how they can continue. You hope to get that call to action, right? Opportunity to seek more information, and then thanks for joining us. Okay. So when you're doing your introduction, think of Maslow as well. So oftentimes I get to a program early and I'm like, hey, we're going to get started here in about 5 minutes. If folks need to use the restroom, this is where it's located. If you need to fill your water bottle, this is what's going on. We are going to be out on the trail for about 45 minutes. So just wanted to make you aware that there are no pit stops on our trails. That's really important too. If you're doing little people programs, especially like first graders, you got to give them every opportunity to use the bathroom before you go out on the trail. Otherwise, there's going to be one kid who thinks that he can water the tree on the trail, which that's something to just keep in the back of your brain. So one way that I organize my information is I have everything wrote out. I have a program outline. So I want to have a program title that's catchy, but also describes to the audience what's going to go on. I have my themes and my sub themes. I have my audience and goals, my objectives, resources. And then, like I said, I write it out. So I don't know if you're able to read this, but this is one of the programs that I've done. You're going to scale back your fear of hognose snakes. So that's my title. My theme is through bravery and understanding of the hognose snake will aid in the survival of this unique species. With the audience, it's best to be specific. You want at least 4 descriptors of your audience. So something like general public is not going to fly. So with this audience, it's a group of 20, so it has the number, local, mixed age families visiting Wildcat Hills. So those are 5 different descriptors on there. Sometimes we're able to go kind of deep dive into that. Sometimes when you're doing a program and you're unsure about how many people can come, just think about where are they coming from? Where are they visiting? Oh, I hope to get more seniors, or I hope to get more families, or I hope to get more avid hikers. That's something to keep in the back of your brain. So the goal to the program, again, why do I want to do this program? I want to increase visitor interest and acceptance of our native snake species, especially the hognose snake, because they're adorable. How am I going to do that? And how do I know my objectives are going to be reached? I want at least 80% of the visitors to properly identify a hognose snake. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to ask an ID question at the end. I'm going to show a couple pictures of some different snakes and see if they can identify which one it is, right? What resources are needed? When I teach this program, I know I'm going to need Wilbur, the hognose snake. I know I'm going to need a picture of a woodhouse toad, a skeleton of a snake, and then future program signups. And then we're going to write a script and we're going to go into our intro, our body conclusion. So during the introduction, you say your name, your organization, how long it's going to be, Maslow, the bathrooms are located here, what's expected of the audience. Another big one to let the audience know at the beginning is like, if you're open to questions throughout the program, or if you would prefer them to be towards the end of the program, you can let your audience know that in your introduction, and then create some sort of hook. So something you want your audience to kind of be thinking about and be like, I wonder how hognose snakes are like shovels, actors, roadkill, and popping balloons. And then that opening question. And then we're going to talk about body, something, and then conclusion. So like I said, this is a lot of information on one slide. And I have this program outline kind of blank, and if folks would like it, I'm more than willing to kind of send that out as well. But the main takeaway is making sure you know who your audience is, right? And then what objectives do you hope to get out of this program? Goals and objectives you hope to get out. And then we're kicking it, like I said, old school to our English classes. What's our body? An introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay. One cool thing to do when you're doing a program is to have fun. People participate in interpretive programs because they want to, not because they have to. All right. So interpretive programs, if people are not interested in the program, maybe it's something different that they had in their mind, they're able to kind of say, okay, well, this program isn't quite for me, and can walk away, right? They're not quite that captive audience when you got a group of school kids that are required to be at school and in that classroom during your classroom program. That's a slightly different audience than an interpretive program, because like I said, people have the choice, if this isn't quite for them, to walk away. And if that does happen, don't take that to heart. Okay. It's just that program wasn't what that person expected. So don't be like, oh, down on yourself because somebody walked away from a program. You don't know if it was just not the time commitment, or if there was something else that was restricting them from being at your program the whole time. Okay. So that's just something to keep it in the back of your brain. So some things you can do to make your program more enjoyable, right? Smile. You're having fun, right? Using those senses, using some different stories and tactics. And I'm a big fan of humor. I like to tell random jokes that are appropriate and tie into your topic. Putting that out there. And use some visual metaphors. So those are all tactics to make sure that you're having fun, and then you're also engaging your audience, right? Like we mentioned before, entertainment isn't the main goal, but it is nice to use, like I said, that humor, to use some active verbs, focus on the individual. I love me some gee whiz facts, right? And making sure that we use some different vehicles or different ways to engage the audience in learning. So, some of the different vehicles we can use. So, I want to kick it old school. My first car was a 67 Volkswagen Beetle in sunshine yellow. So, I felt like it had to make an appearance somewhere. This is not my car because my car is, anyway. So, vehicles, how can we make sure we get people having fun, right, engaging in our stories? There's lots of different things you can do, and it's all personal to you, right? Are you going to use a time scale? Are you going to have them build a craft? So say you're doing a living history program. Are they going to watch somebody build a broom, or maybe they're going to be engaged with a living history demonstration, a living history character? That works really well, like I said, in those historical parks. Puppets is another one, but watch your ages on those. That's just my personal opinion. I do love puppets for the younger kiddos, and sometimes some older folks as well. Using music, poetry, role playing. There's lots of different ways that you can get people engaged in learning and having fun with your program. So there's many more listed. I just picked a few on there. So one main thing that all interpretive programs have are themes. So people tend to remember themes but forget a string of facts. And the theme is what you want your audience to remember after the program. They work kind of like roadmaps, right, for your presentation. They lead the visitor on a journey through the presentation, and they're usually complete sentences, right? And they help you when you're organizing your information for your program, because you have your theme, you have your sentence, and it's kind of like a closet. Whatever doesn't fit within that theme doesn't fit in your closet. So you don't have to go down that path, right? Because you only want to present the information that goes along with your theme. So that helps you kind of finalize and kind of really steer your presentation to make sure that you're hitting that theme. And along with the theme, every good theme has tangibles, intangibles, and universals. Okay. So that helps your audience create a personal connection to the resource. And they're the basic building blocks to interpretation. You want your audience to have a personal connection to the subject or resource. And oftentimes it's tied with emotion. So tangibles are things that you can grasp, things that you know about. So that would be things like a swift fox, like a bighorn sheep, right? Something that people can touch. Intangibles are going to be, feelings, right? They're going to be things that are going to invoke some sort of emotion, survival, death, right? They're all things that most people have maybe felt, no matter where they're coming from, right? And the big one on that is a universal concept. And that's an intangible that everyone can relate to, right? It's relevant to almost anybody, and they're very powerful vehicles that reach people in significant ways. So as you're composing your theme for your program, it's important to have the tangibles. So something that they can touch, something that they can feel, and then something that everyone can relate to, no matter where they're from and where they're at. So we're gonna have a little interactive brain break. So get your chat ready or unmute yourself. So I wanted to know, what are these things, and use one word to describe them. Delicious. Very nice. Yes, they motivation. Oh, it's a cookie. Thank you, Sean. Mouth watering. Oh, very nice. I like the hyphen in there. Yum, yum. Very nice, Matt. Thank you. Yep. Evan, another good one. Very nice. All right. So, home. Adam, Amber, you're getting ahead of me here.
I know,
You're
just
getting,
like a memory. Sorry.
right, you're
Okay.
getting ahead of me here. Yeah, getting ahead. We're gonna go story time now. Okay. So these are my grandma's recipe for peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. So sorry if you have peanut allergies. These aren't for you. So growing up, my grandmother would bake with us all the time. We would all go over there, and these were the cookies that we would make with her. Um, I'm gonna hold it together. So when she passed away, everybody got a copy of her peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. So during COVID, when I wasn't able to be with my family, I made peanut butter chocolate chip cookies, right? And I took this picture and I sent it to my brother and sister and said, missing you. Hope you are all doing well. These are, grandma's peanut butter chocolate chip cookies, right? So now that you know a little bit more background on this picture, what is one word that you would use to describe these peanut butter cookies or cookies in general? All right. So we took comfort, love, hugs, home, gift, right? So we took a tangible item. We took a cookie, right? And we turned it into an intangible with a story. And we're connecting people with, I don't want to say resource, but with a resource, okay? We're connecting people with this cookie. So that's what interpretive programming can do. So we take something simple like a cookie, we're telling a story about the cookie, and we're connecting people with the audience. Because I'm sure most of you have maybe baked cookies or tried to bake cookies, right? So you have a little bit of an idea of how to make them, but they all have a slightly different emotion that they invoke when we're talking about them, right? So that's just one thing that is something easy that we're able to take a resource and we're able to connect it with our tangible intangibles and with our theme. Okay. So to get onto that point, what's the difference though between a topic in a theme, right? And how do we get down to a theme? So themes are kind of hard sometimes, especially for me, because I put way too much thought into the theme and making sure I have a tangible and intangible. But they are a very powerful tool, and they create structure for a presentation, and they help inspire your audience. So the first draft, generally what I want to talk about is cookies. I want to talk about, peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. Okay. But I want to explore with my audience a little bit more about the emotions tied to a cookie, right? You're going to narrow down your topic a little bit, and that's where we're going to get those intangibles, those emotions, okay? And after hearing my presentation, I want my audience to be able to connect the tangible, the things we can touch, with our intangible, the things that we feel, okay? And then when you get it in a sentence, you got your first draft or your theme right there. But again, this takes a little practice, but I wanted you to make sure we got themes kind of covered in there. One thing when you're doing your presentation and you have your theme, you want to make sure that it connects with your audience, with the resource. So you want to put it in the audience's frame of reference. Okay. So oftentimes, especially when I am around like wildlife biologists, they're like, oh, this bat weighs 15 grams. Okay, 15 grams is hard for me to picture, but you know what I can picture? I can picture a Hershey Kiss, or I can picture 5 nickels, because that's my point of reference. I know, not five, three, sorry, 3 nickels, because a nickel weighs 5 grams. Okay. So you want to use their first names as well when you're trying to connect the resource to the audience. And then you want them to kind of reference themselves and tie it into one of their emotions or a memory that they might have, right? So we want to combine what you think is important, what they think is important, and make it relevant. Okay. We also want to make sure that your program represents who you are, right? Your passion and individual style make a difference on how the audience will respond. So I don't want to take a program and hand it to somebody else to present, because their style might be different than mine. They might not want to use as much humor as what I use, or they might not want to use as many gee whiz facts. So that's just something to keep in the back of their brain. Questions on themes, sub themes, intangibles, tangibles. I know we spent a bulk of our time on that, and we're kind of going to go and explore program delivery briefly here, but I wanted to make sure we paused before we went on to the next one. Okay, let's roll. So program delivery. There's some different things to keep in mind when you're presenting, right? Your voice. So in an instance like this, I'm presenting to probably 35 people. It depends if the wind is blowing, how loud do I need to be, right? How fast do I need to talk? Am I giving enough pause for people to respond? Different body language. There's a biologist out here that always makes fun of me for my hand gestures because I like to move my hands a lot. Thankfully, I have a camera, so you can't see me and my hands moving quite as much. But there's different things that you can do when you're presenting, and one of them is also asking questions and soliciting a response. So asking questions and getting a response is good. Sometimes having no response maybe does your audience understand, or are they looking for more clarification? So usually you like to wait 3 to 5 seconds just to give people time to think about it and respond. Maybe I need to ask a clarifying question. If somebody responds with a question, the important thing is to repeat it to the whole group. I don't know how many times I've been at a big conference and this person in the front asks a question, and then the person that's like in front of the podium with the speaker or the microphone just kind of goes off on the answer. And I'm too busy focused on what the question was to really pay attention to what the answer was. So that's something to keep in the back of your brain. That way everybody's able to hear the question and then focus on your response. And then try asking, what questions do you have for those open-ended questions, instead of do you have any questions? Because do you have any questions is a yes, no answer, right? But what questions do you have opens it up and says, okay, well, maybe I have a question. Maybe I'll think about it. There are a couple different questioning strategies, and this is something that we can go into more details later as well. So an open-ended question is something great during a program introduction. What do you notice? What do you feel? If you're looking for a very specific, correct answer, that's a closed ended question, and they're great at the end of a program. But sometimes closed-ended questions don't work as great with a bunch of kids, and because like if they don't have the right question, they might feel kind of silly for raising their hand and answering it. Yes, no questions are great for group responses because it moves the program along pretty quickly. And then if you have time, discussions are a great way to involve everyone. And then you have your capstone question. So a question for folks to think about and reflect at the end of a program. So it's a great takeaway message in a form of a question. Also, it's how you respond to the question, right? A lot of it's going to be nonverbal communication. So are you nodding? Are you saying thank you so much for your question? If you don't understand the question, be like, I wonder if you could tell me more about the question. I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking. And then if you need more data, or if you need to look something up and you're not quite sure, the person, you might go and say like, oh gosh, let's go check the field guide, because we might be able to find that bird in the field guide that you saw 3 weeks ago that is bright green. Okay. And I mentioned a little earlier is nonverbal. So making sure you have eye contact with your participant. So here I am, eye to eye with this little person here. We're making eye contact, making sure that you're smiling, you're warm, you're welcoming. And some of the things to think about with your nonverbal communication is if you wear perfume or cologne or something like that, is your scent off-putting to some of your audience, right? Is your hair distracting? I had a friend that presented with the Park Service that always wore her hair in pigtails until she got somebody came to her program and said, your pigtails make you look like you're really super young, and maybe people won't take you as serious if your hair unless your hair's pulled back into a ponytail. So it wasn't trying to be critical, it was just trying to help them engage with the audience a little bit more. So that kind of goes into our post-program evaluations. Like, there's things that I do after a program where I'm like, gosh, did I meet my program objectives? Did people walk away with information that I hoped that they would after they came to my program? Do you have your evaluation either from an audience or another co-presenter? And are there any trends or technology that you need to consider? And the other thing that you can try is also peer or video evaluation. So what do you notice when you're watching your videoed presentation, or self-critiqued by somebody else that might be at the program? So again, that example of the hair being in pigtails. I had a temporary that videoed her program just so she could watch her program and how she presented it. Where did she take breaks? Did she leave enough time for questions, different things like that? And that also might help you kind of time your programs a little bit as well. So those are just things to think about with some self-evaluation. And then if you wanted somebody else to evaluate your program as well. That's also helpful to know if your theme is strong. So if somebody else is watching your program and at the end you ask them, what do you think my theme was? If they're able to pick up on your theme, that means it's a pretty strong theme that they're remembering after your program. So through interpretation is understanding, through understanding is appreciation, and through appreciation is protection, right? I'm going to leave you with this thought. This is a picture at one of our bat programs out at Fort Robinson State Park. The little person in the Batman sweatshirt had never seen a real live bat. And I was like, dude, you're wearing a Batman sweatshirt. Like, I feel like you need to see a bat today. And so here's a picture of them in front of a biologist holding a bat. And after that interpretive program, I asked this young person, like, hey, what did you think about seeing that bat? And his response was, this was so cool. I want to do this job someday. So through an effective interpretive program, we're able to change people's ideas on maybe some unloved and misunderstood creatures, right? Or connecting them to a resource that maybe they didn't know a little bit about. So with that, I wanted to know, what questions do you have? And I'm going to leave some resources up there as well, so you can kind of see I didn't just make this up on my own.
That was so excellent, Amanda. That was so thorough. I cannot believe everything you packed in.
I'm so sorry. If we went so fast, like I said, this is a
No.
36-hour course condensed into an hour. So if folks want to learn more information about interpretation or about a certified interpretive guide class, you're more than what I can share my email, I guess, in the chat. And people are more than welcome to send me some different questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
So like that little kid with the bat, he said he wanted to, do this job one day. What made you want to do this job?
Ooh, what made me want to be to do this job? Well,
Nice
I'm gonna
question.
yeah, I'm gonna blame my parents. I grew up in a small farm and we were always outside. Okay, we were always running around, harassing animals, chasing my brother around with snakes, right? He's terrified to this day of them, so I'm sure I didn't help facilitate that love for him. Um, and so I really enjoyed being outdoors, right? I really enjoyed learning a lot about these cool animals. And when I got to be about a junior in high school, I realized that this was an actual profession that people can get paid to do this kind of stuff. And so I was like, oh, it takes nature, it takes animals, combines them together, and I get to talk to people. So that's kind of what helped facilitate this. So I have to say it was my family. I'm going to blame them that kind of got me interested in this field. Um, and now today, looking back, I am also doing it for my kids, right? I have two little girls at home that did make a couple appearances in this presentation, and I want to make sure they have that same love of nature and the outdoors, and I enjoy sharing it with our visitors into our state parks.
Beautiful. Thanks for that question, Amanda. Anybody else have any questions for Amanda?
That was 5 seconds. So, yeah, I did put my email in the chat. So if anybody has any follow-up questions or something that you're like, gosh, I wish I would have asked her this, or I'm thinking about it the next day and I want to learn more information about this, right? Feel free to shoot me an email. Okay. I love talking interpretation, as you probably noticed. And so I would love to chat with anybody about any follow-up questions that you might have.
Excellent. And thank you for that, Amanda. And also, with that, I'll be sending out an email to everyone who registered for this today with both an evaluation of this webinar, but also any resources she mentioned. I will do my best to link, and also her contact information and the recording of this webinar in case you have colleagues or you want to be able to watch this again, because there's so much great information here today. So thanks everyone for your contribution today, your questions. And Amanda, this was excellent. What a great one to end the year on. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a good rest of your week and a great rest of your year. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Sean. Bye.
Yeah, I saw a couple of Nebraska or Grand Island people on there.